So the OnePlus 9 Pro came out many years ago. Just kidding, came out in 2021. It's not that old of a phone. So let's go and see how it holds up in 2023. Now, there's a few things you kind of have to know about this device. The very first thing is that this phone is already kind of two, phones behind. So we had the 11, we had the 10, and this one, the 9 Pro, was one of the last Pro models. There may have been a 10 sort of Pro kind of model if you spec'd it out high enough, but this one being one of the last Pros is honestly very interesting. Now, I have some strong opinions about this device, but I will say, if you want to pick up some ones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the 9 Pro, we did have a 6.7-inch LTPO Fluid AMOLED display, and I definitely do think it's a decent panel. It's not the best panel of all time, but I do think OnePlus did a decent job. It's 1440p and it's 120 Hz. It doesn't really get that much better than that in this day and age. Of course, panels now are like brighter, maybe a little bit. Maybe you can get to like 144 Hz panel somewhere in the market, but for the most part, you're really not going to be getting a phone that, is better than this thing in the panel side. Now, it is a curved panel. Some people may prefer some sort of like flat styling of panel, but I've always liked curved ones. I think it kind of gives it a little bit more of like a premium look, which has always been pretty cool. You have a hole punch display as well. And overall, the design of this phone still holds up fairly well in this day and age. On the bottom, you do have the USB-C port, which is cool. It's not too much to complain about there either. And on the back, you have a frosted glass back. Now, this is still very premium. I still like the way this glass back looks. And when you feel it, it still feels very premium. And as I mentioned for a long time now, if you are getting a device like this, you are going to be in very good hands because it's still going to be holding up very well from the way things look. Now, you are getting a camera on this thing too, which is kind of like a quadruple camera setup in a way. We'll talk about that more in a second, but for the most part, the camera setup here really isn't anything outrageous we haven't seen before, but like I said, we'll talk about that in a second. Some other notable things going on with this phone. It does have IP certification, which for some phones may not be super crazy, but for a OnePlus device, that is kind of crazy because we really haven't gotten some sort of IP certification on every one of their devices since this one. So that's always been something that's good when you're getting a phone with IP certification, and this one does actually have it. On top of that, you are getting wireless charging, which is really cool. So you can go ahead and wirelessly charge this device if you want to. Again, it's not anything crazy, not anything we already haven't seen before, but you do get that type of capability, which is pretty cool at the end of the day. So from the outside, definitely still looks very good. Still, it's a very good feeling and looking phone for the most part. There's really not that much to complain about here. So at the end of the day, at least the outside still looks pretty good. Now, in the camera department, this is another interesting side of this phone if you kind of want to, kind of say it like that. It had a 48 megapixel wide angle lens, 8 megapixel telephoto lens, 50 megapixel ultra wide camera, then a 2 megapixel monochrome camera. And on the front, you had a 16 megapixel wide angle lens. Now, I will definitely tell you the camera on this device isn't anything outrageous, and it's not anything you haven't already seen before. If you've ever seen any of the Samsung phones, any iPhones, those cameras I would argue are an overall better sensor than this thing. So it's just something you have to keep in the back of your head, that if you're getting some sort of device like this, you are already kind of getting a device that does kind of have somewhat of a limited camera. Now, you can do 8K video, which is amazing. You can do 4K up to 120 frames per second, which is awesome, but you're limited on the front. You can only do 1080p on the front of this phone. You could not do any 4K at 60, nothing like that at all. And that could be kind of an annoyance for some people out there. I know for me personally, that is a pretty big annoyance. And like I said, that can be an annoyance for you too. So keep that in mind. But I think beyond that, you are getting a good camera. There's definitely been way worse cameras out there. And, if you need a sensor to kind of move on with your life, I guess this thing's okay. But like I said, I really would not go out of my way to get a device like this anymore because it is going to be a fairly limited camera sensor when it kind of comes down to it. So keep that in mind. But other than that, and the other thing is the telephoto lens is 8 megapixels, and the monochrome camera doesn't even really mean that much anyway at the end of the day. So keep that in mind, but regardless, it's kind of how I feel about it. Now in the software and the longevity portion, this thing did start off with Android 11. It is upgradable to Android 13, which is always cool. You can go ahead and upgrade this thing if you want to, but I will tell you, like I've stated many times, this thing with its version of software that it had, it really wasn't that great of a version of software. I think we've all kind of known this by now. It was very, it was good when it first came out, and I think this was one of the last devices to actually have Oxygen OS on a decent version of software. Since then, it's been pretty much, downhill from there. I think Auction OS merged with Color OS. And then we had like this version of software, which I'm not really too sure even what, OnePlus was doing here, but it is what it is. There's not too much we can do about it in that standpoint. And like I said, it's kind of a limited version of software. Take it as you will. But in this point, that's kind of where we're at. If you are able to custom ROM this thing, which you're not able to, that would have been perfect. Unfortunately, that's not quite the case. So again, we're stuck in another like limbo phase where it's really, really not worth it in that specific standpoint either. So keep that in mind, but kind of covers it up there. Now, from the performance side of things, this thing does have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside with 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, but it does go up to 12 gigabytes of RAM if you do really want to, take it up to that level. And I think that's a really cool thing. If you want to spec it out a little bit higher, you do have that type of capability, which is awesome. Now, is it ideal? Probably not, because you can go and get another phone out there in the market that will give you not only more RAM, but also more storage. The problem with these OnePlus phones is that they start off at like 128 gigs, but they only go up to 256 gigabytes. And that can, you can max out that storage very fast. In fact, you can even like the, Samsung's from 2021, you could get at least a terabyte on it. So that's still kind of a weird thing you have going here. I've never been a fan of that way that OnePlus has approached it, including Google, they do the same thing. But on the performance side, I will say it did have one of the better chipsets of 2021. So that's always a good thing. You can always go and get a device like this and still be in pretty decent situations for that chipset. So I've always felt like that's a really good thing. I've always felt like the performance pretty much on everything else about this device has been pretty good as well. That 120 Hz display really gives it that much extra, push in terms of smoothness. So that's another really cool thing you have going here too. And again, it's just, it is what it is. It's a good performing phone. It's pretty much going to be up there with the other devices that are out there as well, but it's not perfect. There's definitely other phones out in the market that may give you a better, run for your money, but it's good. It's not too much to complain about, and it's still very, very good enough for me too. So that kind of covers it up there as well. Had a 4500 mAh battery, which is also pretty decent. Again, I think if you're getting a device like this, you're still getting a phone that's still pretty good from the performance side. So in terms of that, and to kind of sum up everything, I definitely do think a phone like the OnePlus 9 Pro still a good phone. There's not the most amount of things to complain about here, and I do think OnePlus has done a good job. It's not a perfect phone, clearly, but I think hardware-wise it's good. But software is the thing that throws me off the most about this device. Why OnePlus decided to go and switch up their software like crazy is one thing. I don't even know what they were doing there. But also the other thing is why OnePlus decided to go and maybe not put the best camera on this thing either. They didn't give it as many storage options as they probably should have. So there's a lot of things here that I think OnePlus should have done. And had they done them correctly, this phone probably would have been a little bit more future-proof. But I guess that's kind of where we're at. I would probably recommend buying like a Pixel 7 or a Pixel 7 Pro, a Samsung Galaxy S21 or S22 Plus, an iPhone 14 Plus if you want to. But that's pretty much how this phone holds up in 2023. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.